Hi, Standers. This is Sheila Hollinger with Marriage Revealed Ministries. And today's title message is The Straw That Broke the Camel's Back. This message is about the thing that is what it takes, what it's going to take to get through to the stubborn heart, through the pride, through the rebellion, the lawlessness that our spouses are going through. And I want to discuss this in a way that, the idiom, the straw that broke the camel's back, is an accumulation of things, straw, and it keeps getting piled on and piled on and piled on until finally there comes a break. There comes a point where that final straw, the last thing, takes a direction where everything falls apart. And I want to talk about what those things are. So those things, those straws, are personal. My straw is not the same as yours. Your straw is not the same as your spouse's. What makes up these straws are our beliefs, how we were raised, the environment, what we're sensitive to, what we believe in, what we can't stand, what aggravates us, what disappoints us, what hurts us. All of these things are things that make up who you are and what you believe in. So when you have a lost person that is out there in the world, and you see them living life and they're literally doing things that they used to tell you they hated. They used to despise swearing or drinking or just, there's so many things out there, right? That your spouse can't stand, but now they're sitting there doing it, right? And it's these things that you struggle to understand. Where was the turning of this for my spouse? Where did all of a sudden they become the very thing that they despise or the very thing that they can't stand? And why is it not bothering them? So these are all very personal things to your spouse that make up who they have become in this lost season. And trying to figure out what their thing is, what their straw is, what they now are doing, and it's not bothering them. It's not becoming that straw that's going to break their back, so to speak. But we don't know that. We don't know that that is the very thing that's piling up. Okay, let's just say we have a person that really understands alcohol. They have parents that used to drink, and they didn't like it, they hated it, and now they're doing it. And we're sitting there looking at them going, I thought that would be something that they would never do, and we think it's not affecting them, but it is. It's that straw that's piling on and piling on. The straw that broke the camel's back is like what you are going to tolerate in your life when you look in the mirror and you come face to face with yourself. And it's not always a one-time thing. It's not, I had a this and now I'm done. I don't like how it turned me into. A lot of times it's a chipping away. It is a progression of, like I said, an accumulation of constantly getting up, looking in the mirror and saying, who have I become? Okay, I'm not that bad. I haven't gone to that place yet where I've broken my back with the weight of this thing. But it's an accumulation and it gets there. And so what happens is it takes time. It takes time for the spouse to keep looking at themselves and for that weight to start to wear them down. And all throughout the Bible, you see that is what God is working on, is just letting the weight. He's waiting on the weight of their sins, the separation from Him, to wear them out, where sin is exhausting because it separates you from who you were created to be in Him. If we are created to have an identity in him, we're created 3 in 1, spirit, soul, flesh. When our spirits are separated from him, it's starving. It hasn't been fed. That starts to wear them down. And it starts to throw a big fuss because it's not getting the identity it needs to get in him, right? So these are all things that God waits and watches as your spouse starts to feel the effects of not being who they were created to be in him, not having that relationship with their father that they're supposed to have. We all feel the distance. We all feel the void, and we will go searching. We will go looking, and that's where new relationships come in. We start to feel a discontent in our life. That's where the midlife crisis comes in, because you're not walking in where you're supposed to be walking, and you will go start seeking out the counterfeits. But all those counterfeits will start to wear on you. That's the straw, right? Looking at yourself in the mirror. Sometimes you don't do it you don't do it in the very beginning because your flesh is getting what it wants. Your soul is like happy in this place. There's desire, there's lust, there's a temptation. Sin is pleasurable. That's why people do it. It brings some type of a pleasure to your flesh, to your soul. It feeds something that you've been missing, but you can only go so long because your spirit, which was created to be one, unified with God, cannot tolerate this. Your spirit is going to have an uproar, right? It's going to get louder and louder, especially as time starts to run out, because we're only on this earth for so long. Your spirit wants to go home, and our home is not here. It's with him. And the longer it is separated from him, and the longer it goes without being fed, it starts to really create this discontent in you that is crying out, I want my father. I want to be connected again. And so, again, back to the straw that broke the camel's back. Those straws, okay, are so personal to us. Those things that start to bother us and weigh us down and irritate us are those very things that is what is needed. Now, here's what standards do. I did it, right? I took my personal straws, my personal things, and I projected that onto my spouse constantly. Like, oh, this is going to bother him. This is going to be his thing that wakes him up and says, oh, no, I can't live with myself doing this. But I was taking what was personal to me, what would bother me if I was that lost person, right? We do that all the time when we say, I don't understand. How can my spouse not care? How can my spouse not go day after day being in contact with our children? How can it bother them to miss this? How can it bother them that our child is crying? How can it, right? Well, first of all, they're in a place of their hearts are hard, but it might not be a place that it is accumulated yet, right? So these are probably most likely bothering them, but it hasn't accumulated yet to the point where it breaks them. And it could be something that they're just not as sensitive to, right? Maybe they grew up without a parent. Maybe they grew up in a situation that they're not as sensitive to things that you are. So you have to be really careful that you are not projecting onto them what your straws are, what your thing is. When you look in the mirror and you will not tolerate certain things when you see back about yourself, doesn't mean that's exactly what your spouse would not tolerate for themselves. I hope that makes sense. You have to be so careful. When my husband would start to open up after we were restored, and he would tell me the things that actually were his thing, right? The things that bothered him, the thing that he would get woken up in the night and start thinking about. I was like, what? That's what bothered you? I mean, I was blown away. I had no clue. So here I was thinking that the big major things, because that's certainly what would bother me if I was doing them, that wasn't bothering him. He grew up in a completely different environment than I did, right? His whole history of what made him and what he came to believe in and what he could tolerate, what he loved, what he hated, what he was sensitive to, were completely different than mine. So, of course, when he looked in the mirror, there were some things that were more, oh no, I will not go there. I will not ever let myself do this or look like this to other people. Or maybe there was a certain person that there was no way he was going to look bad in their eyes, but he didn't mind looking bad in my eyes, or he didn't mind looking bad, to his children, right? And it just blew me away. But you see this over and over. The standard is like, why does not bother them to look, to break my heart? Why does it not bother them to look bad in my eyes? But he's so concerned about looking bad, or she's so concerned about looking bad to the other person, or looking bad to this or that, right? It blows our minds. We just don't get it. And we start to internalize it as, oh, I guess they never loved me. Because if they loved me, they would not do this. That can't be farthest from the truth, right? It can't be. Because we see it over and over and over. We see spouses that really do love. My husband, God told me constantly, Sheila, he loves you. He really does love you. It didn't feel like love, though. How could someone that loved me be doing this? Only God can understand the heart. Only God can understand certain things about where the hard heart goes and what the hard heart becomes desensitized to. Okay, that hard heart is complex. We can't figure it out, and we can't come to assumptions and judges that, oh, well, they must not love us. They must not love our children. They must love that other person too much. You cannot make those assumptions. You're only hurting yourself when you make those assumptions. Be very, very careful not to do that. And that can also lead into you having some type of a self-pity moment. It could lead into you being a victim moment. It can lead into you even becoming hard in heart yourself when you make that judgment that it must be because it's there's no love. Please don't go there. This isn't about love. This is about a hard heart who's chosen selfishness, rebellion, lawlessness, and it's about how they have turned to that place and why. And you're not going to know all the answers. I do not know why my husband did what he did. God does. My husband does not even understand it. Even 8 years after being restored and coming back to himself, he does not get fully. This is all about who you are in the moment that you turn hard-hearted and you make that choice. It's about your relationship with the Father, what you know about yourself, what you're willing to do to turn selfish. There's so much that surrounds that whole turning of events for you when you make that life decision that I'm going to hand my life over to Satan. I'm going to harden in my heart and walk away from who I truly, truly am. Only God knows what got you to that point in your life. And it could be a whole string, a whole bunch of straws that broke the camel's back that got you to that place, right? Where you just abandoned who you truly are in nature, in character, and went into this state, right? One of the things that God showed me toward the very end of our 7-year storm was King Nebuchadnezzar and how he went beast-like. Pride had driven him to a state where he could literally not see what God had done and blessed him with. And God warned him. He warned him that it was going to go badly for him if he continued to be prideful and claimed that all of that came from him. God turned him beast-like. It's almost like for God, that was the straw that broke the camel's back, right? God's like, I'm done. I'm done with this man, this king who's taking this whole scenario and leaving me out of it. So he turned him beast-like for 7 years. He lost touch of humanness. Sometimes we look at our spouses and say, this is not a human thing that a man could just walk away from his wife, his family, his children, his job, his identity, his purpose, and just turn himself over into this unhuman-like place, right? I remember one morning coming in contact with some really bad details, going in and confronting my husband, and out of my mouth, it was not me, out of my mouth, I kept saying, you're not human, you're not human. And when I left that encounter with my husband, I thought to myself, what an odd thing to be coming out of my mouth. You're not human. Of all the years, I'd never said that to another person. I'd never even thought that about another person. And it was later in that day or that week, God showed me Nebuchadnezzar and how he had turned him beast-like. And when I saw it was for 7 years, I freaked out on God. I'm like, oh, no, you're not telling me another 7 years of this. We were in our 6th year. And then God took me and showed me, no, this was our 6th year, and it was coming to an end. That was the first time God had ever really showed me how much longer the storm was. And I held on to that we were in our 6th year, and it was about to be coming to an end. And it did. 7 years. 7 years is what our storm was. And so, but some of you are wondering, when is God ever going to tell me how much longer I have to go? Okay, God did not tell me until the 6th year that this was coming to an end in the 7th year. And he used King Nebuchadnezzar's story to show me that. And it's like my husband had lost touch of the human side of himself. He had been turned over to this beast-like state of mind where he just wasn't in touch with human character, caring, putting his wife, putting his children, right? This was all a state of mind that as a wife with a broken heart, I didn't understand it. It's still complex. It's still not understandable. But I can look back and say, you know what, when God showed me that, I had to say, Lord, this is bigger than I could understand. This is bigger than I can comprehend. But I thanked him for showing me that. I thanked him that he gave me finally I got some time, right? I saw some closure to our storm coming to an end, which I had been asking him for all those years. How much longer? How much longer? And so if you're in that place, constantly asking God how much longer, just wait on him. He might give you something that shows you a timeline, right? And so this message that I had gotten from God was about my husband being in a state, a place. And I love the end of the message that King Nebuchadnezzar, when he came out of it, he was showing everyone, sharing with everyone, look what God did. He was so humble, and he exposed what he had been like, how prideful he was. And then he was sharing with the world, and he was giving God his glory, right? And so the state of coming out of it is for God's glory. It's not about just your marriage being restored, but it's about coming out. Look at Don Griffin coming back out of this darkness and saying, this was for my relationship with my Father. Don's testimony is it's on a video, several videos on the website. on the YouTube channel. He's also written, and there's some messages he's written on the website. But this was about his relationship with his father. He came back to his father and his marriage, all in one weekend, right? Heart turning back to God and saying, God, I don't like who I am without you. I don't like this person I've turned into. Did he have that moment of of clarity in one straw that broke the camel's back? Yes, but it had been an accumulation over the years of things that he was piling on and piling on and piling on. And that's where it happens. It's not just one little thing. And I'm telling you right now, it's probably not what you think is going to bother them. Oh, he missed another birthday. Oh, she didn't come for this holiday, or she didn't do this, or she didn't get to see this, and we think this is it. This is what's going to turn them. This is what's going to break them. And then when it doesn't, we get so upset. We start to lose heart. We start to lose hope. It's a straw that gets piled on, and it will eventually break them down. That's where our hope has to be, that in the whole process, the distancing from who they really are, the distance from who they are designed and created to have a relationship with, their Father. Over time, that is going to be the thing that breaks them. That's where we put our hope. So the time that we hate, right? I'm 1 year in, I'm 2 years in, I'm 3 years in. We hate it and we despise it, but it's what's needed. That means that's a time that it's taken your spouse to start to feel the effect, the distance that is needed, right? So yeah, they look in the mirror and they say, I've been away from my family for 1 month. That's not enough time. They can handle 1 month. We can't. We think we can't. Yes, we can. A year goes by. 2 years go by. 3 years go by. 4 years, 5 years, 6 years. I started to see it. My husband in the first year, oh my goodness, not the same person in the 7th year. The first year, he was so hardened in heart, so rebellious, so mean, right? Cruel, unkind in his words. It was really all about him. But in the 7th year, no, not the same person. You could see the weight he was carrying. You could see the break was coming. You could see it. And some people say, oh, that's a softening. We all describe it differently, but I could see how my husband was becoming less tolerant to himself. He was becoming less tolerant to the distance that he had had with God. He was becoming less tolerant to waking up and looking at himself and seeing who he was. He was at his breaking point. What broke him? I don't know. All I know is I got pulled out of bed at 4 a.m. by a man crying, saying, I can't do this. I need God. I don't know what happened that weekend. I don't have a clue. Maybe it was the same thing that had happened for 7 straight years. Maybe it was nothing different. Maybe it was just the same thing over and over and over and over and over. And it finally just weighted him down to the point of snapping and breaking and saying, I'm done. I need God. Because I'll tell you, for 7 years, I heard, I'm sorry. I'm not going to do this anymore. At first, I loved hearing that. I craved it. I needed that, right? Because I believed in, I'm sorry, Sheila. I love you. I won't do this anymore. But I was deceived by those words because it wasn't about me freeing my husband. And you can see that him saying he was sorry to me didn't set him free. And I believe he was sorry. There were moments of real sorrow, that he was sorry that he was hurting me. But he was not sorry that he was hurting God. And that's why he wasn't free. He was not sorry that he was in adultery. He was not sorry that he was breaking God's heart. He wasn't sorry when he looked in the mirror and saw himself yet. He was sorry about how I made him feel. He was sorry about how he was missing out on things with his kids, but it wasn't sorry enough. It was when he was sorry to God. And I can't speak for him. I don't know exactly all of the details. I don't know what was the straw. I don't know what was his personal thing. When he looked at himself in the mirror, what he saw, what he was like, I can't tolerate this about myself. It was personal. And I'm not even going to try to explain that to you. We shouldn't. I don't want anybody to speak for me. I don't want anybody to say what is personal to Sheila. I probably don't even exactly know. And you might not know what's personal to you, but it is personal. Just don't take what is personal to you, project it onto your spouse, and believe that what breaks your heart for yourself is going to break them and be that thing that breaks them. Let that be between them and God. They need that moment of clarity. So don't become deceived in that, oh, it didn't break him, it didn't break her, nothing is ever going to get through to them. Don't fall for that lie. Don't fall for it. Because you don't know what's happening between them and God. You don't know what's keeping them up at night. You don't know what they see when they look in the mirror. You don't know if they're even capable yet of seeing themselves and what they tell themselves. If they're still justifying, well, she did this to me. He did this. He created this. Or maybe it was their parent. Maybe it was their childhood. Maybe it's what they believe about themselves. Well, I don't deserve this. Maybe it's the fear, the unworthiness, the rejection roots that is blinding them and keeping them bound. You don't know. You can become so bitter and hardened in heart yourself over what you don't know, what you're assuming, what your perspective is, what your assumptions are. Be careful not to fall into that trap. That's what Satan wants for you, to become so blinded by what you think you know that you fail to see what is real and what's really going on with them. That's where we have to put our faith and trust in God and His ability, because praise God, He sees it all. He knows it all. He understands it all. He knows every hair on your spouse's head. You better believe He knows every single moment your spouse has gone through that got them to that place of turning heart and heart. God knows exactly what it's going to take to wake them back up, to get them to turn to Him. And that's what this is about. Your spouse crying out to Jesus, saying, I've messed up my life. I can't do this anymore. I can't live in this place where I hate myself, where I hate who I've become. So that is where God is trying to get them. My spouse, when he woke me up that morning, not once did he say to me, Sheila, I'm so sorry I did this to you. I'm so sorry I did this to my children. I'm so sorry for our marriage. No, I was out of the picture. I was not even part of that equation that morning. But for 7 years, I had been. That was where all his sorries were surrounding me and our marriage and our children. And guess what? That did not change him. If you are sitting there right now in a place where you are wanting that apology, it's not going to change your spouse's heart. It's not. It didn't for me for 7 years, that apology. But when he said those words, I need God, that was a heart cry of a heart that recognized that it wasn't the marriage that was breaking, that was keeping him bound. That was a man recognizing he needed his father. He didn't need our marriage fixed. He didn't need my approval. He didn't need my forgiveness. He needed his father. Pray for your spouse. Pray for them to get to that point where they don't see marriage as the problem. They don't see fixing marriage as the solution. They see themselves. They see their need without their Savior, and they recognize and they say, I need Jesus. I need him. And then if God shows you that there's things that are stopping your spouse, shame, guilt, condemnation, don't ever pray those things on your spouse. Pray that your spouse has the courage to say, you know what? I feel so ashamed. I feel so much condemnation. But I don't care. I want God anyway. I want to push through these things. Pray that your spouse has the courage to push through the shame, push through the guilt, and accept what Jesus did for them and how much he loves them. That condemnation feels like heaven closes the door and barricades it and says, you're not welcome here. You've messed up and I don't want anything to do with you. That's what condemnation does. So you have a spouse who wants to be loved, wants to be forgiven by God, but feels like the door's closed. So pray they have the courage to push through that lie and overcome it. Sometimes you have spouses who really want to set things right. They really want to break free from the lies. They really want to come home. They want to come home to God. They want to come back to you. They want to go back to that point where they messed up and reverse everything, and they think it's too late. Even if we tell them it's not too late, our door's open. Sometimes they can't hear it, they can't accept it, they can't feel it because they're believing that lie. Pray for them. Pray for them to be able to push to the point where they say, you know what? I want heaven to open up to me. And they can see that, guess what? It was never closed to them. They just had to ask. They just had to ask for forgiveness. So I pray this message blessed you. I pray that you are able to understand that your straw that would break you, not your spouse's straw, not at all. Or if it is, right? If it is, it just might not be that final straw yet, but it is weighing them down. Trust that there are things that are going on in them that is wearing them out and breaking them down, and that they will turn to the Lord and cry out so they can go home to be with him in the end, right? That's what it's all about. We are set apart. We are not part of this world. And when we are blind to that fact, it messes us up greatly. God wants us back with him in the end, right? When our time on earth is over, he wants us home with him. That's the ultimate goal. God bless you guys. I love you guys. Make sure you check out our website, Marriage Revealed Ministries. And if you'd like to sow, we have a donation page, a giving page. If you want to be part of our Standards United Facebook group, and if you need one-on-one mentoring, all of that information, if you'd like to book a session with me, is found on our website, Marriage Revealed Ministries. God bless you guys and have a great week.